How are we preparing students for their future, not our past?
I always lean towards the comedic aspect of it. So it's like, now if Claude Code comes out, it's like, I just learned the code.
Yeah, it's so true. Here in the United States, we know that unemployment for those between the ages of 18 and 24 is at an all-time high of over 8%. I leaned into a lot in the book is this idea that AI is forcing us to be more human.
Families out there that are worried about, like, how the heck is my kid going to adapt to this?
The issue is, are we setting up systems to allow that to happen?
Jeff Utecht has been in education for almost 30 years. He's worked in schools across 20 countries, advised state education systems on AI, and just wrote a book called Humans Still Required. His message to parents: the education system your kid is in was built for a world that no longer exists. Here's what to do about it. Welcome back to the Supported Learning Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Joe Sebastian. Families often ask me how to navigate the maze of college admissions without wasting thousands of dollars and years of time. And the answer usually involves finding the people who have figured out the rules of the game and cracked the code of what schools aren't telling you. And that's why I'm really thrilled to have Jeff Utecht here today. Jeff is an educator, author, and consultant with nearly 30 years in the field. He is a Bill and Melinda Gates grant recipient, a TEDx speaker, co-host of the Shifting Schools podcast, and again, he just published Humans Still Required: Leading Schools, the Work Machines Can't Do. He's helped co-create AI guidance for the state of Washington and has worked with schools from over 20 countries. Jeff, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Joe. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. So I've kind of given you the intro, but like, who are you? What's the specific problem you are trying to solve in education? If you want to give us the 60-second rundown or whatever.
The 60-second rundown. Well, it's I have one, I guess, beaming light that I focus on, and that is the idea that our job in education is to prepare students for their future, not our past. And everything I do looks at how I support schools through that lens. How are we preparing students for their future, not our past? That's the work I do around right now AI. It's around the work I do around generational leadership and generational understanding. Because one of the things that I find very fascinating is education itself is the only thing that everybody's gone through here in the United States. Anyways, everybody goes through the educational system, whether it worked for you or not, or how well it worked for you for not. Everybody's gone through it. And one of the biggest issues we have in education is when you didn't have children that are going through the system, you're looking at the system as when you were going through school.
Right.
You remember your best teachers. You remember your worst teachers. You want school to look like it looked when you were in school because of how you believe things should be. And that's where we start getting in trouble, because school, of course, as you hear over and over again, still looks very similar. And a big part of that is it's a big system to try and move when you have generations of people that have been going through the system. And so anything that looks different, a lot of times is really stressful to parents and grandparents and the community at large.
Well, you're from Seattle, so are you a Colin Cowherd fan?
Yeah.
Are you? Or not? I don't know if do you know who he is?
I have no clue who he is. No.
Oh, he's like he's on Fox News. He's a sports commentary.
Okay.
But he talks about the difference between baseball and football. Don't worry. I'm a history teacher, so I'm going somewhere with it.
Okay.
So he talks about, I mean, this is before like the pitch clock and baseball and everything, but he's talking about baseball is stuck in the past. It's all about legacy and Hall of Fame and all that stuff. And football's always focused on the future.
Yeah.
And I look at education. I'm almost 20 years in now. Yeah. And I look at it as it definitely has been more of a baseball experience than a football experience. We're very slow to change. Yeah. And we're stuck like what you said, what school used to be, when I was in school was like this. And just initiatives that come around, stay in for a little bit and go again. But, you know, with your 30 years of experience, what is the thing that schools are consistently getting wrong right now?
Well, I think I think the big thing is this idea that the world of work is changing very rapidly. When I'm not working in education, I'm also working with business leaders, Fortune 500 companies, business leaders of small and medium businesses across the United States and across the world. And I think the thing that right now we are not focused on enough in K-12 ed is the idea of work itself is rapidly changing for a generation. Here in the United States, we know that unemployment for those between the ages of 18 and 24 is at an all-time high of over 8%. We also know that for this generation, if you have a 4-year degree, a bachelor's degree coming out of university, your unemployment rate is almost the same as those with a high school diploma, which tells us that there's something happening in the system itself. And we're going to have to figure it out in K-12. How do we prepare students for that future that looks a lot different than it did for other generations? And I think that's where this idea of generational understanding comes into play. And a lot of the work I'm doing right now is supporting teachers and parents and understanding that, yeah, we did things to your generation when you were in school based on what that future of work looked like. And the future of work right now is changing so quickly that we have to make sure the kids have the skills needed for that workplace. And I think that right now is the big lift that we're going through, specifically around some of the stuff that we see with AI, but just in the workforce in general.
Yeah. So publishing an AI book is risky as well, because it's AI is changing so fast. But in terms of your book, it's on a concept of humans still require. What is the core message of that book, and why does it matter for parents who might be worried? Because literally, in this 10-year political turmoil that we have been in, we went from a politician saying, "Hey, coal workers, leave the coal mines and just learn the code." Now it's like, I have this. I always lean towards the comedic aspect of it. So it's like, now if Claude Code comes out, it's like, I just learned the code.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true.
And then it was like, hey, you got to be a prompt engineer. Well, you don't need a prompt. You don't need ChatGPT can prompt engineer for you. So like, what families out there that are worried about, like, how the heck is my kid going to adapt to this? What would you say?
Well, I think the first thing to understand about the book is where it comes from. It's not an AI book. It is a leadership book made for this moment. And, my work through education for the last 30 years, I've been a full-time consultant since 2012. I helped to write the guidance for here in the state of Washington around AI in public schools. We were the 5th state to come out with guidance at that time. Since then, I've helped 13 other states and 4 other countries write that guidance. I've worked with superintendent organizations, principals organizations from across the United States over the last 3 years with AI. And it's through all of that work that the book came. And the book is about leadership. It's about looking at how do you lead in these moments when we're going through great transitions. Every generation goes through about 4 great transitions in their lifetime. And right now we are going through another great transition. So this isn't new. We have historical data that shows how you lead through these transitions. That's number one. Number 2 is looking at what is AI forcing us to do. And in the book, what I leaned into a lot in the book is this idea that AI is forcing us to be more human. And what happens in education, as it does in a lot of other areas of work, is we find all these ways to stay busy and we offload all other kinds of tasks. And these other tasks get in the way of what are the actual human things that we need to be able to do. So, for example, judgment is a human thing. AI can do all kinds of stuff for you. It cannot make judgment for you. We humans still hold judgment in our final decisions. And that is a human skill that we're going to have to get back to. If we're just asking kids to write an essay, AI is going to do that. AI already can do that. But if we're asking kids to put judgment on that essay, to apply what that essay says about my community, about my lived experience, then we get outside the machine. And in the book, we really talk about what are those things that get us back to being human, the things that we've always said we wanted. And in the world of AI, we're going to be able to double down on those and actually, I think, go a lot further in getting to a place of this idea of critical thinking, which is something that we've been trying to get to now for over 40 years in education. So,
yeah, and that word has been used a lot, and we obviously need it because our kids don't think critically. What opportunity does AI present for us to actually finally figure this out and crack the code? Because I think we want kids to be critical thinkers. It's in our mission statements and our portraits of graduates, but what is a teacher's role in that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I disagree with you. I think kids think critically all the time. I'm talking to kids right now that are critically thinking, do I use AI on this assignment or not on this assignment?
Right.
Based on they're making the judgment, is this assignment worth my time and effort? The kids that I'm talking to across the United States make that critical decision for themselves day in and day out, number one. Number two, if you go back and look in history, you can go back to the late 1970s and find where we started having all kinds of papers. We had books written here in the United States and across the Western world around this idea of why don't kids critically think? This isn't a new problem. You can go back and look at the data. We have been struggling to get kids to quote unquote critically think for decades, which should tell us something. It's not about the tools that come and go. It's trying to get people to think deeply has always been an issue. You then pretend that it's a teenager whose frontal lobe isn't fully developed. And of course, it's going to be a hard skill to do. The issue is, are we setting up systems to allow that to happen? And if we're not setting up systems to allow that to happen, we can't expect kids to critically think on their own. That's the shift in schools.
Do you think the American education system, because obviously it's designed, it's by an antiquated model, was that it doesn't implement critical thinking because it wasn't designed to make critical thinkers?
I think it was. I think if you go back and read the books from John Dewey back in 1920 and 1910, you can see critical thinking throughout that. He doesn't call it critical thinking. He talks about experimental learning, which is the exact same thing.
Right.
But if you look at the foundational documents of what this educational system was set on before the SAT, before the College Board, before we got it, we pushed every kid to have to go to a 4-year degree. It was very much that way. We got away from that. And I think what AI is going to do is it's going to make us refocus on what were those foundational skills that this entire public education system was built on in the first place.
So you've worked with schools across 20 countries. What does American education get wrong that other countries have figured out?
Well, I don't know if anybody's figured it out. I think that's the first thing. I think number two, no matter what you read in the news, everybody has adopted the American system. There are very few places that have not adopted a very American system way of teaching. Even, we see all the time that Finland does it different. Well, there's a lot of things in in those reports that you have to look at. First of all, Finland is not a diverse country. Let's just start with that. There's no diversity in Finland. There's no poverty in Finland. Let's put it this way. There's only enough kids in Finland as is my public school here in Seattle. That's the entire nation of Finland. If I only had to educate 60,000 kids, yeah, you would do things completely different. There are other things that I know that other countries do that are different. Other countries, much like Finland, but a lot of the European Union, the way the time they have kids go to school is different than the time we have here in the United States. The way that our expectations of before school and after school programs are different here than they are in other parts of the world.
Have you gone to any of the Asian countries?
I lived in Bangkok for 4 years. I lived in Shanghai, China for 3 and taught in both.
And we had a, here's how messed up the system is in America. So I had a teacher with her master's and principal experience. She taught in Singapore and I think Hong Kong.
Mm-hmm.
With her and her husband, they moved back to where I was assistant principal at. She was like a building something. couldn't get like it's just limited jobs. Way overly qualified. So would you say the same thing? So you're talking about the European model, is the same thing true in the Asian model in those schools? As
far as kids being ahead?
Yeah.
Or the system itself?
In terms of what you said about Finland, you said it's kind of more mirroring the education.
I think there's a cultural difference to education in Asia. In Asian countries, most, not all, education is seen as something that is not a given. It is something that you are honored to have. And that comes from the community, that comes from the culture of that country, and that comes right down to the parents. There's just a different way they view education. Teachers are held in high regard. I think we've gotten away from that here in the United States. But in Asia, I would still say that, yes, teachers are held in high regard. People have a lot of respect for teachers and educators. And those communities show it. When I was teaching, or even when I was teaching in Saudi Arabia, Saudi Arabia, I came out of the United States and where I taught for 3 years. I was a 4th and 5th grade teacher. And I moved to Saudi Arabia. And in our first month of teaching, we covered almost 4 months of what it took me to cover back here in the United States.
Wow.
But every kid does their homework. Mm-hmm. Poverty is very little. I didn't have to take kids' clothes home and wash them over the weekend. I didn't have to go buy fresh fruit for my students. There's a different way that we treat education in different parts of the world. And I think that has more to do with it than the system itself.
So you're now co-facilitating the AI guidance, or have done that, for Washington State.
Yeah.
Based on what you saw, how prepared are schools for AI right now?
I think we're getting there. I don't think anybody was prepared for how fast it was going to come. I don't think anybody was prepared for the speed of which it's transitioning education and the workplace. Living here in Seattle, we get updates almost daily of some tech company laying off more workers.
Right.
We've been hit very hard with that here in the city of Seattle and the state of Washington. But I think states are doing well. I think the states that have gotten out in front of this, still today, we've only have 35 states that have even come out with guidance for public ed. And so there are some states who are not even, from this Department of Education, still not putting out guidance to support those teachers. In some places, like, for example, Montana, that has been picked up by nonprofits or other organizations have picked up and brought out guidance in those states. So I think we're doing okay. I think it has a lot to do with the state, who's leading the state and how fast that state is going. For example, here in the state of Washington, we got on it very quickly. Our Department of Ed got on it. We were the 5th state to come out with guidance. And I had over 10 hours with every superintendent in the first 2 years in 2023 and 2024. And that just puts you on a different trajectory when you have a state push coming out
Sure.
and you have support from leadership all the way down to teachers in the classroom.
So you've lived through multiple tech cycles in education, right? You've had the smart boards, iPads, one-on-one devices. Is the AI shift fundamentally different, or is it just another wave?
I think it's another wave. When I started teaching, it was putting internet in schools. I sat on the committee that debated whether or not teachers should get email back in the day. When I got the Bill and Melinda Gates grant, I was the first teacher in my classroom with an LCD projector. We've seen these waves come and go before. We saw the wave of one-to-one. That was, something that I was supporting before the pandemic. And then we saw the pandemic. And that was a transition that we had to go through. So these transitions come and go. And I think all transitions have a very similar trajectory. The issue is again, the speed of which this one hit us.
Right.
And not only did it hit us hard as educators, but as young generations always do, they adapt to the technology very, very quickly. And the one fascinating thing that I'm finding right now, and I was just talking to some teachers again the other day that continues, and I have no scientific evidence around this other than conversations I'm having with teachers across the United States. We see a divide with students who are about 13, 14 years old, which is the end of Gen Z, by the way. That's the end of that generation. With that generation who are still in our schools, I'm hearing more and more that there's about a 50-50 split between kids who are all in on AI and 50% of kids who don't want to touch it because of the environmental factors. And then when you talk to kids that are under the age of 12 or 13, they're all in on AI. There's not the environmental factor. They're trying to use it any way they can to do all kinds of incredible stuff. But it's really interesting that we've got almost half our kids in middle school, high school, who are the kids we're worried about the most. And across the United States, there's 50% of them that are saying, I don't know if I trust this thing. I don't know if I'm going to use it. I don't want to have an account. And another 50% who are saying, I need to know how to use it. I need to know what this thing does. And I'm willing to use it on my schoolwork, prepare me for my future, whether it is helping me write college applications, whether it's helping me get scholarships. If a kid right now, I keep telling students, if you're not using AI to help you find and write scholarships, you're missing your moment in time.
Right.
Why not? Those scholarships are made for AI, in 500 words. Tell me your leadership skills. Come on. It's just until they're willing to change what they're asking kids, of course, go use it. You should. Technology of your time.
What For students who are already using AI like ChatGPT, Copilot, whatever, most parents have no idea,
Yep.
right? What should families be doing at home around AI and having those conversations with their kids?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and that's some of the parent presentations that I'm doing now are on this. And I think number one is to have open conversations about it. I think number two is most parents, I'm going to guess nowadays, are either using it inside their work or they've heard about it on the news. And a big part of it is to be open about how we are using it and what are the different ways we're using it. But at the end of the day, we want to make sure we're coming back to those ideas of judgment, analysis. We want to be reflective in it. And being able to talk through this idea of how do you use AI? Why are you using AI? Understand, and one of the things I love to make sure everyone knows is how it works. We are seeing more and more people. The latest reports coming out are using AI for their own therapy or for their own social emotional support, which is, I think, a great use of AI if you understand what AI is doing. If you understand that AI is always going to assume that you are right, you're not wrong. There are ways that you can set up the structures that it can really be supportive for you, but you have to understand how the system works. You have to understand what is happening inside the black box. And once you do, you can critically analyze those outputs and be a better informed human when it comes to using this tool.
So the let's talk about how we could challenge some of the school leaders listening, because I think, like you said, it's not universally adopted. States are being pushed to have, like, there's a requirement that they have some language around AI, but there's nothing universal yet. So you talked about shifting schools. What does that actually mean? What does a shift in school look like versus a traditional one?
Well, I think right now around AI, it's going to be, again, this idea of being open and honest. The schools I'm working with, we are opening up AI for all teachers and students down to 13. We can talk about why you want to leverage different platforms right now inside schools. But the big thing is as we go through these different transitions, whenever there's a new technology like this and we end up in a battle between, the adults and the kids, and we try to shut something down where we say no using AI, it never works. Young generations forever. I was a generation that they tried to ban calculators and they never were able to ban calculators, right? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter what the technology is. You set up this structure where it's us versus them, and the adults lose every time inside schools, which is why we have to create a structure of openness. A lot of my trainings are focused on how do you set up classroom structures? How do we adopt an AI matrix? How do we make sure every assignment has an AI scale on it so that students know on this assignment, you can use AI at a level 2, or on this assignment, you can use AI at a level 4? What do those different levels mean? That's the type of stuff that is in the guidance that changes the structure of the classroom. But until we're willing to set up new structures for the classroom, we are going to continue to be in this. Did they use AI? Did they not use AI? Why are kids quote unquote cheating when all they're doing is trying to finish their work that they feel isn't very important? And we end up in a whole mess of things because we haven't put the structures in place for a new type of learning environment.
And you talked about personal learning networks, PLNs. Why should parents care about whether their kids are connected to a global network?
Well, I mean, I think first and foremost, again, this goes back to my work I'm doing in businesses and my work around generational understanding. I don't think most people understand just how powerful LinkedIn is. I know most people in education don't. LinkedIn is a social network, and 94% of all hires across the United States can be tracked back to a LinkedIn connection. That's how powerful that social network is. The age you can be to be on LinkedIn is 16. So one of my goals is every high school senior should graduate with a LinkedIn profile, especially as the world of work is starting to change around us, where less and less people are going to need 4-year degrees. We are seeing a transition back to the skills, and you can go out and get a certificate. Just today, Google launched another 4 different certificates you can get that are free. Those certificates come where you can put your certificate up on LinkedIn, and that means something. You don't need to have a 4-year degree always to do the work. So we need to teach kids how to use social networking for good. That's what my TED Talk was on back in 2010, by the way. And nobody listened to it or watched it then. And I don't think anybody's watching it now. But that's it. I mean, understand the power of LinkedIn and LinkedIn alone. 94% of all hires go through LinkedIn. If that's not a reason to get kids on LinkedIn before they graduate, I don't know what is.
And in terms of digital citizenship, you said it shouldn't be a 30-minute lesson. What should it be instead?
Well, digital citizenship is something that just needs to be embedded in everything we do. There's not a time, especially now, we find ourselves in one-to-one classrooms. We find ourselves, where students have cell phones. And one of the things I love about the era that we're in right now is more and more states are banning cell phones from the classroom or from schools. More and more schools are banning classrooms. And there has been no research to show that banning phones in schools has led to less time of students on the phone or less time students on computers. I have not seen any research that says, oh, this school banned phones and kids reduced their on-screen time by 3 hours. It just isn't happening. But what is happening is we're not having the conversations any longer. That when we don't have devices in the schools, we don't allow teachers to have the critical conversations around digital citizenship. What does it mean to live in a life where you are always connected with a phone or a watch or both or whatever it might be? Those are the conversations that we need to be having day in and day out. And we didn't have them. We didn't have them back in 2012 and 2013. We didn't have them back in 2010 when I did the TED Talk and warned people about this moment in time. We pretended that social media didn't exist. We pretended that it wasn't going to be an issue. And now we find ourselves in 2026, and the best option we have is ban phones in schools. And it's not solving a problem. It's not changing the conversation. It's not supporting a generation and understanding what those structures are to be healthy with their devices. We're just trying to ban them so we can once again pretend it doesn't exist. And that's not going to change the mental health crisis with our young people.
Do you think that's part of the reason why? I mean, are we trying to get out ahead of AI because this could be the next social media in terms of not knowing how to use it?
I think you're right. I think part of what this is I feel like we learned our lesson. I've been very proud of K-12 education that we are only 4 years into this. And there's already a lot of momentum of how do we support kids with this technology, because we didn't through the last transition and we're paying the price now.
Yeah, it's interesting because, we could have just taught kids like how to properly use social media or not been on it until they're teenagers or ready, or we'll just ban phones. Though it's probably
Well, and I think there were ways to set it up. I mean, when I was teaching in Bangkok, back to my overseas teaching time, when I was teaching in Bangkok, we had 8th graders create it. And this is back in the day when only Facebook was the largest at the time. So we're talking 2010, 2011. We had 7th and 8th graders set up a Facebook page where they had 3,000 followers to ban plastic bags at the supermarket in Bangkok. And we're able to ban the use of plastic bags, bring your own bag to the supermarket at 3 different supermarkets in Thailand. That's the power of social media when you're taught to use it correctly. You can create movements with it. Hence the whole Arab Spring, hence of what we saw in Iran, a few months ago. You can use this and leverage it in very powerful ways for yourself and for your community. But if you're not taught how to do that, it doesn't just happen.
So for the high achieving family out there and the kids taking multiple AP courses, aiming for top colleges, how does this digital transformation piece fit into their strategy?
Well, I think the big thing is I think you need to take a step back and see what are those jobs that are actually going to be out there. And I'm not so worried about the jobs. We talk about this all the time. We don't know what the jobs of the future are going to be. That's right. We've never known, actually. If you go back in time, we never knew. In the 1980s, they didn't know that you'd be an online influencer. That just wasn't a job in the 1980s when I was in school. So what you have to do is you have to look at what are the skills? What are the skills that are going to be needed? And then what education do you need for those skills? And I think you can find lists of skills everywhere. UNESCO is one that I follow that talks about what are some of those skills. Analytical thinking is big right now. Leadership skills are big right now. Problem-based analysis is huge right now. Those are skills that the jobs will be there. I'm not worried about what the jobs are. I'm worried about what the skills are, right? Empathy and understanding is a skill that is going to have jobs in the future. When I worked at high-powered international schools, and I still do a lot of work in high-powered international schools, I know there's a lot of prestige in going to high-power universities, and I would just be very cautious today to make sure that you do your due diligence to make sure you understand what that degree is going to get you, because we know all too well what happens if you end up dropping $100,000 or $200,000 on a 4-year degree, and all of a sudden nobody's hiring that anymore. All you have to do is look here in my backyard at the University of Washington. We just graduated one of the top computer science programs in the nation, and these kids can't find jobs all of a sudden coming out of university, and they got caught in the transition. But if you're a high school student right now or a parent of high school kids, you're not caught in the transition. We know what's coming. We understand what the future looks like. And how do we help guide our young people into what are going to be the jobs and set them up for success as the idea of work continues to change?
Well, let's move into a lightning round, if you don't mind, where
Sure.
we'll have some rapid questions, and you can answer with single responses, no explanation needed. Okay.
All right.
Before I do that, what is coming in education, or what do you see education next 5 years, and what's coming that most families don't see?
I think the thing that most families don't see coming is we are very quick to every kid having an own individual tutor that is AI driven. I think that'll be the big thing.
Something we're working on. Non-AI driven or AI driven?
AI driven.
Yeah, something we're working on right now.
Yep.
So cool. Personalized learning, right?
Yep.
All right. Lightning round. One book that changed how you think about education.
Again, I would go back to any book written by John Dewey in the 1920s. Education in the Theory of Learning. All of those books. I just reread 2 of them about 2 weeks ago. And again, I think that is what the foundation of this system was built on. And I'd encourage anybody, parent or student, to go back and read the foundational books. My favorite line and my favorite quote from John Dewey is education isn't the preparation for life. Education is life itself. And if we all kind of looked at education that way, I think the world would be a very different place.
If you could go back and tell yourself one thing when you started in 1999, what would it be?
Stay curious. I think that's the thing that I tell students as well. Keep looking forward. Don't be afraid of change.
Worst advice you hear school leaders giving right now?
Worst advice. Let's see. That's a good one. The worst advice. Don't use AI.
One thing parents overthink about technology with their kids.
That it's all bad and it's going to ruin them.
And if someone could only do one thing after listening to this, what would it be? Or what should
it would be? To be curious and go do some research on what are the changes happening in the workforce in whatever country you happen to be listening in.
All right. Well, Jeff, this has been amazing, incredible. I really, really appreciate your time. Thank you for everything you're doing to kind of lead the charge in education and innovation on the cutting edge there, and serving for over 30 years, huh? Almost 30 years. 30 years?
Almost 30 years, yeah.
Almost 30 years. Yeah. For people who want to go deeper with you, and where can they find you?
Yeah, so a couple different places. You can find me at jeffutecht.com. We'll put those in the show notes, I'm sure. And then Shifting Schools and the Shifting Schools podcast. You can find Shifting Schools podcast anywhere that you can find podcasts. I've been podcasting since 2006. We have a lot of thought leaders on and authors, and others are a lot of focus on AI right now because that is the focus, but a lot of other educational well-being stuff over there as well.
Awesome. Cool. So thank you. Appreciate it. Hope you'll come back in the future with talk. We'll see where we're at with AI in a little bit. I'm sure we'll have updates in education. So
for sure. Well, thanks, Jeff. Appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. Thank you all for listening to the Supported Learning Podcast. We'll see you next time.